Can you please do the PewDiePie intro from 2015? Alright, I'll try my best impression. How's it going, bros? My name is PewDiePie. How's that? It's been 4 years since Egoraptor uploaded his sequelitis on Ocarina of Time and A Link to the Past, and when it first came out, I remember being completely blown away by it. The video had a clear message, but was also really funny. I still come back to it to rewatch it from time to time, and my perspective on it has changed a lot since I first saw it. When I watched it for the first time, the video showed me a different viewpoint on Ocarina of Time, which is a game I have loved ever since my childhood. I had never really looked at Ocarina of Time with a critical lens, and this video helped me realize that. Ironically though, I didn't look at this video with a critical lens either, so I just kind of took all his points to heart, which kind of contradicts the whole point of the video to begin with. So I thought it'd be appropriate to have another look at this video and critically analyze it. By the way, I'm well aware that I'm not the first to do this and there has been a bunch of other people doing the exact same thing, but I don't give a fuck! So at the start of the video, Arin talks about the Zelda formula that most games in the series tend to follow. He explains that the original Zelda had very little direction and was very open-ended, so exploring and figuring things out for yourself was heavily encouraged. In A Link to the Past, your mission was already laid out for you with a bigger focus on the story, which caused the exploration aspect of the game to diminish substantially. It kinda comes down to your personal preference which of these two you prefer, since both are valid design choices and both have their pros and cons. Arin mentions this as well, and it's pretty clear that he prefers an open world Zelda experience where he can explore to his heart's content with little to no restrictions. So that's all fine and dandy, but he argues that this open world exploration business is one of the defining features of what makes a Zelda game a Zelda game. But so far, only the first and last entries in the series have done this. I don't think it's fair to just assert that, you know, this is what makes Zelda Zelda because the first game did it. I think that would be missing the point of a sequel more than anything, because to assert that an open world defines Zelda is just as formulaic as the formula we've come to know instead. But I mean, some Zelda games don't even have Ganon in it. Some Zelda games don't even have Zelda as a major character in the story. I think what defines a Zelda game more than anything is going on an epic quest in order to rid the world of evil. Whether that be a huge pig monster or some kid with an ancient mask or a train? Anyway, it's all irrelevant. Whether this quest is laid out in a linear experience or completely open world doesn't have to take away from the Zelda-ness of a Zelda game. Zelda is very diverse and the possibilities with it are endless, and I think that's part of the reason it's still going strong to this day. So I think most of you probably know about the Game Grumps YouTube channel. It's pretty popular. It's basically a Let's Play channel hosted by Arin and his friend Dan. A while back they did a playthrough of Ocarina of Time on the channel, and it was very insightful. So I'm going to make some references to it. Now don't worry, I'm not going to make the argument that his points are invalid because Arin sucks at video games, because that's just plain wrong. Well, except for the part where he sucks at video games, of course. So the first thing he talks about regarding Ocarina of Time is the transition from 2D to 3D. Specifically, how that affects combat. Ocarina of Time introduced a lock-on system, which they called Z-targeting, and this caused combat to become much more complicated. And here's where Arin makes a crucial mistake, in my opinion. Arin says that despite the complicated combat system, for a lot of enemies you just have to kind of wait around for them to drop their guard so you can attack them, which is supposedly very easy to do.
It's a fucking asshole! Fuck off, you fucking clam! Why won't it fucking God? It's so bullshit!
I think.
Just fuck. Ah! I hate it! Oh my God, now I'm dead! Because of this stupid fucking clam!
Man, all you had to do is wait, Arin. How could you mess that up? You also could have just swam past it if you were so inclined, but I guess you must have had some personal vendetta against that clam. Anyway, Arin's bad play is not the point here. It's that because of Arin's rather questionable playstyle, he neglects strategies other than just waiting. For example, a lot of enemies can be stunned and rendered vulnerable to attack with the Deku Nuts.
What do you use those nuts for again?
You shoot them and they stun enemies, but they're pretty worthless.
You shoot them and they stun enemies, but they're pretty worthless.
Waiting is the easy, safe strat, but the trade-off is that it takes longer. If you want to play faster and more efficiently, you'll have to try riskier strats. I don't think Ocarina of Time's combat system is flawless, of course, because Arin does make a good point when he says that combat and exploration are, for the most part, completely disconnected from one another. I would have liked it if I were able to use the environment when fighting enemies, like throwing rocks at them, pushing them off cliffs, that sort of thing. Sadly, this is restricted to just a couple of encounters. I also would have liked it if the combat was a little more dynamic. For example, when you hit an enemy while they're defending, you get knocked back, but enemies never really use this opening to counterattack and punish the player.
Oh, what the fuck? I didn't think his reach was that long.
Dude.
Man, if only you had some big metallic surface with which you could deflect enemy attacks to hide behind. Arin completely forgets what items he has at his disposal half the time. Like this moment in the Dodongo's cavern where he's supposed to use the bombs in order to blow up the eyes of the giant Dodongo skull. You get bombs literally in the previous fucking room, but his memory just lapses and he walks around like an idiot trying to get the bomb flowers up the elevator. He complains that puzzles in the game are unfair when you don't have all the pieces, but most of the time he doesn't even realize he has all the pieces to the puzzle to begin with. Most puzzles in the game are actually pretty good. Like, let's take the Great Deku Tree as an example. So there's a couple puzzles in this dungeon, most of which involve these spider webs. When you first enter the dungeon, you'll probably notice this web on the floor, and as you approach it, Navi will point out to you that you can see to the bottom. There's some water at the bottom there, so it's probably safe if you fell through. But how do we go about doing that? Since your only other option is to climb up the inside of the tree, you go ahead and do that. And on the way, you'll see a platform with a heart at the edge of it, inviting you to jump for it to collect it. When you do so, you'll land on the web, and it'll respond by bouncing up and down. So now you know the web reacts when you jump on it from a great height, which would imply that something might happen if you jump from the very top. Lo and behold, something does happen. You fall straight through into a pool of water you saw earlier, and you can continue adventuring. Most puzzles in the game give you some sort of hint as to what to do, just like this one.
Welcome to my least favorite temple, the fire temple. Everyone will
right?
complain about the water temple, and yeah, it's frustrating, but it's not as dumb as this one. People complain about the water temple, but at least in the water temple, it's like really clear what you have to do. Alright, next let me just search my mind and figure out,
Alright, you have a walkthrough. We know.
Yep.
Everybody knows it at this point. You've been fucking walking into walls with no explanation.
What?
You know, you would have been a lot more believable when you said that the water temple is relatively straightforward if you didn't have to resort to using a walkthrough right from the very get-go. And you still got lost. I think it's pretty obvious that the water temple would have been a complete fucking disaster piece if you hadn't used the walkthrough, just like the fire temple. The puzzles are not the issue here. The issue is downright poor performance and not paying the fuck attention. Now, of course, that doesn't mean all of Ocarina's puzzles are good. There are a couple of puzzles that I don't really like because they're not consistent. The biggest example being this puzzle in the Shadow Temple. You have to cross this chasm here, and there's seemingly no way to get across. The hover boots certainly don't do the job, and the only other thing you could possibly interact with are these bombs on the other side. However, throwing a bomb of your own simply doesn't reach far enough, and that is the only way to remotely detonate bomb flowers under normal circumstances. What you're supposed to do here is shoot an arrow at the bombs to detonate them, but that is inconsistent with the game's mechanics because arrows don't normally trigger bombs. Another thing I don't really like is the invisible walls and shit. That's not a puzzle, it's just cheap. You're supposed to see them using the lens of truth, but the problem is that in order to get the lens of truth, you have to traverse the bottom of the well, which is full of invisible walls and floors, and it's just annoying. So there's definitely some problems with Ocarina of Time's puzzles, but I think Arin was on the wrong track when he addressed not having all the pieces, because that doesn't really happen without you knowing about it. Like, he shows this pillar you're supposed to grab with the golden gauntlets, but you should probably know that you can't move it yet because there's a pillar exactly like this in the overworld which you cannot move. You can grab hold of it, but Link just lets go of it, implying that you have to get or do something first in order to move it. Alright, so this is the part of the sequelitis that I agree with most. Arin points out the forced linearity and predictability of this game, and I do think he has a point because it stifles your sense of adventure while playing the game. I don't really mind if a Zelda game is linear, but Ocarina of Time has no good reason for it other than Navi says so. Well, technically you could do the temples out of order, but it's impossible to tell whether or not you'll actually be able to beat the temple, since every temple assumes you've beaten the previous ones and may or may not require items from those temples to be used. So for all intents and purposes, this is the order of operations you're stuck with, and it puts a damper on the exploring aspect of the game. The story forces you into this linear path to give you a reason to explore the world, but, as Arin points out, this ignores the player's innate drive to quest on their own. By the way, the problem isn't that Ocarina of Time is a linear game, but it presents itself as an open world while only allowing you to do things in a specific order. Why provide me with a big open world with all kinds of areas to explore when I can only accomplish anything if I follow a very specific sequence? Well, this is a rhetorical question, but there's actually an answer to it. It's because the plot demands it. But that doesn't have to be the case. Just look at Breath of the Wild. The story kind of pushes you into a certain direction, but you are completely free to ignore that and do your own thing at your own discretion, while still telling a cohesive story. You can follow the game's directions if you want, but you don't have to. And I think that could have worked for Ocarina of Time too. So that's it pretty much. Of course, Ocarina of Time is not a flawless game. Far from it, but Arin's criticisms are misplaced. Recently, Arin did a playthrough of Majora's Mask on Game Grumps, and a lot of the same problems arose again. He did not pay attention and he rushed through the game, and they had to give up in the end because Arin ended up so underpowered. He had stated before that Majora's Mask is one of his favorite Zelda games, but that doesn't seem very evident from his playthrough. One thing I don't really get is why they didn't just have Dan play the game himself, since it's completely new for him. I think it would make for a much more genuine and enjoyable experience for both the audience and the Grumps themselves. Anyway, that's enough about the Game Grumps. While this sequelitis has some major flaws, I still think it's a very good video, because at the end of the day, I think this sequelitis in particular made people think more than any other of his sequelitises. And thus concludes my little review or whatever. Make sure to leave a comment with your thoughts and opinions. Also, join my Discord server. Ah, damn it. Oh my god, he one-shots me. At first. There we go. Oh, the bottle strats, dude. The bottle strats. Look at this. Oh, come on, get hit already. Oh, okay, there we go.